Hey everybody, how are we doing today? Today we have a video that's been a long time in the making. We're going to be setting up a game server today for the co-op mod for Deus Ex, developed by online member Han, titled HX. If you guys have never played Deus Ex or are interested into playing it, I highly recommend playing the single player version first before you go ahead and hop online into a co-op session. It's just a lot funner to experience the story in a single player environment. But putting all that aside, I get asked on a regular basis, how do I set up my Deus Ex HX servers? And I do mine a little bit differently than most probably would, but I do it to cut costs. And today I'm going to show you how to do it because the United States game server that I run for this particular mod is, I got a letter the other day saying that the server's RAID exploded and that all my all my data got lost. So I figured why not make a video, so here we are. Alright, we're just gonna hop into it here, no more introduction, let's just dive right in. So, first thing you're gonna want to do is you're actually gonna want to rent a what's called a VPS, a virtual private server. If you're not familiar with that, I highly recommend you do some Googling, get acquainted with some of the terminology that I'm going to be spitting out between this video. There are some predicates that you're going to have to be aware of going forward. I do expect you to know a little bit of Linux command line, just enough to install a system, set it up, and like move copy files. We're going to be installing a web control panel to help make management of most of this stuff a lot easier. Alright, so we need to actually get a server. So there's lots of ways you can do it. You can go ahead and you can go out to like the 5 or 6 big major virtual server providers like Amazon, Azure. There's going to be DigitalOcean, Vultr, Linode, etc., etc. Those are the bigs, the greats. Those are going to be a little bit more expensive. I believe for the minimum package that you're going to want to run the server on, it's going to cost you about $5 a month. But option 2, if you know the caveats associated with it, is to search forums on the low-end Talk and low-end Spirit and I believe the hosted Talk web forums. If you go ahead and you scour the offers page around here, you can often find a lot of deals going on at a particular time. At the time of the filming of this video, it happened right after Black Friday, so we're going to see a lot of really low offers on the table here. But just as an example, I have a couple servers through this person. Excuse me, scroll through the top here. They have offerings available based on location, like how much RAM, disk space, and processing power you get associated with it. To run a Deus Ex HX co-op server, the bare minimum package that we're going to need is a 512 megabyte RAM. Yes, that is all you need to run the Linux operating system, Wine, and the game server itself. So yeah, you can go ahead, you can pick up any package from any of these providers that you see fit. It's really all up to your use case. In terms of game servers, you're always going to want to choose a game server that's located closer to you geologically, to help reduce latency, so you don't get massive ping spikes when you're actually playing the game, because that can really break you out of your immersion. So yeah, like I said, the bare minimum is a good example of a bare minimum package right here. Is this right here. You get 1 CPU core, 512 gigs of RAM, megabytes of RAM, excuse me, and a 15 gigs on SSD. Perfect, and a dedicated IPv4 address. That's like bare minimum that we need. Perfect. I already went ahead and purchased a package, and we're actually just reinstalling today. So first things first, we're gonna need to load our virtual server up with a operating system. So there's actually two ways to do it. You can either use the templates here in OS reinstall, or some providers even allow you to mount ISOs and manually install based off an ISO, almost as if you were sitting in front of it yourself. But we're going to go the short route today to help keep this video as short as possible, and we're just going to reinstall the OS through the template. And we're going to be using Debian 10 today. At the time of this video being recorded, this is the most recent operating system that I recommend using. If you're more comfortable with Ubuntu and Ubuntu's documentation, you can go ahead and substitute most of the commands in this video for Ubuntu's commands. Just be aware that if you do run into an error, you're going to need to go back and Google the difference of the two operating system commands that you're trying to issue. All right. I'm going to keep this simple, short, and sweet. I highly recommend when you do this on your own personal production servers that you use proper security and just follow common sense guidelines, kind of, long passwords, use key pairs where available, don't share your password, etc., etc. etc., etc. Excuse me. All right. This is going to reinstall. This is going to take about 5, maybe 10 minutes, depending on situation at the time. So we'll be right back, and this is all done. All right, we are back now, and it looks like OS reinstallation is complete. So now that we have our OS installed, we need to SSH into our machine so we can actually start making configurations. I like to use a program called Kitty for Windows. It's an evolution of the program Putty, if you've ever heard of that program. So we're just gonna go ahead, pardon that, copy our IP address, and go ahead and open that up. We're gonna accept our server's key, public key, and we're gonna go ahead and log in with that root, password and the root account that we created earlier in the control panel. So first things first is I like to do a password change. And then a system update. Now I do want to remind everybody going forward that this is actually not scripted whatsoever. I am going completely off the top of my head here in hopes to show everybody what it's actually like in real world, how to install this. So any particular issues that we run into, we can solve them together. Now that we've updated our repository, now it's time to actually upgrade the system. Pull all the new packages in. Alright, right here it's just asking us what config file we want to keep. Do we want to pull the one from the repository or keep the one on the system? Generally, when I'm doing fresh system upgrades, I will pull the package maintainers version, which means we're going to be pulling it from the repository. Alright, now that it's done updating the system, we're actually going to go in for a reboot. And we're going to give it just a couple seconds for it to go down, come back online, and then we'll reconnect. And we're going to have to type in our new password because we updated it. And beautiful. Alright, we should be on a completely upgraded system. And yes, we are. As we can see, we're on, this is our host name. We're on Linux, our host name, our kernel version from Debian. And yeah. Alright, so now for the fun stuff. We're actually going to be cheating a little bit today. We're not going to be doing everything through command line. There's a lot of things management-wise that we can help automate, and we're actually going to be using Webmin for that today. But before we get to some of that, I'm going to be adding a couple users here. I'm going to be adding a sudo user for myself, Juggernauts, and I'm going to be adding a user for the actual server to run in. We're going to be labeling that one DeusX. So, going to go ahead. Add a user. And don't be worried if nothing's popping up on screen. Passwords normally aren't echoed in Linux. And all that looks correct. We're going to need to install a couple packages right off the bat because Debian omits some of my favorite packages. I feel like I'm forgetting a couple off the top of my head here. Oh, I did. I forgot sudo, the main one I was going in for. Alright, now that we have sudo installed, we can actually put our user, Juggernauts, in the sudo group so that user can perform administrative functions, and that way, for an added bonus of security, we disable login of root. We don't want people accessing root. We don't want people to even try to be accessing root. So we just disable it right off the bat, and anybody who tries to log in with it will just automatically get banned. So, adding this user to sudo. Done. So now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to edit our SSH config and make it so that root can no longer log in. Change this, permit root login to no, and save the file. Alright, I'm going to do one last reboot. Although technically we don't have to reboot, we could just restart the service, but we're keeping it simple. Alright, and since we disabled root, we're going to have to restart our session here. Oops, that won't work. Alright, now that we have that, we can log in with our proper user now. And this user should have its abilities, and it does. Yay, we can use sudo. So now we're going to go ahead, we're going to install webmin to help us manage some of the other features of the thing. We still have a couple things we need to do here in the command line, as such as installing wine, webmin, and any potential issues that webmin can't come up with probably. So we're going to keep this window open. Alright, so we need to install webmin. Since we're using Debian, we want the Debian version of webmin. Boom. Installing some dependencies there. Everything that webmin needs to run. Now we install Debian package, or I should say download it, and then install it. Oh no, we ran into an error. No bueno. Oh, it says here that we have a package that's not installed, so let's go ahead and see if we can install that really quick. And following the breadcrumb trail. There we go. Everything self-corrected. And now it is installing webmin. Beautiful. Alright, now that we have webmin installed, we can go ahead and log into it. I already have my host name and my I already have a domain name, my host name set up, and my DNS record set up. So I can actually just log in with my URL, but in your case, you are going to want to use probably your IP address. So you'd replace your URL with your IP address. But now we have webmin. Good old webmin. Webmin is a backend control panel, and it allows you to manage most functions of your system from the web browser. And it's very low demand in the resource requirements. So even on this very small 512 megabyte package that we're installing on, it won't have any problems. So as you can see with webmin, we are barely using anything. So now for even more fun, we actually have to install wine, and we're also going to want to install a program called virtual frame buffer. Since we're going to be running this server not in a desktop environment and completely headless, we actually need a fake virtual desktop for wine to output some of its data to. It's just required to help keep bugs down in wine, and I've noticed it really helps keep things smooth. It's not entirely required by every program, but in Deus Ex's case, it is, because they like to, if you ever run the program in Windows, it actually has a little system icon tray that sits in the bottom right that you can right click on. Essentially, that's what we're exporting out virtually. So now that we have this, we need to go ahead and install wine. And ever since Debian 10, Wine HQ has had a bit of a dependency issue in its repo. So we actually have to install two repos, one that corrects the error in Debian 10. I don't believe they're ever going to correct it because I believe it's a debate between Debian repo maintainers and the Wine HQ repo maintainers. I could be wrong on that one, but I believe that's the case. So we're just going to go ahead, we're going to copy and paste most of this stuff in, and we're going to get Wine set up. We're going to skip that one because we already did it. So this one is installing the dependencies. We are installing the security software and the Python properties needed to load repos and keys in. Third-party repos and keys. Easily, I should say. Alright, key is successfully added. Now it's time to add the repo. Alright, that went pretty smoothly. Now we can go ahead and install the third-party fix repo and key. Alright, that's all done. And we're going to be installing the stable version of Wine today. If you would rather have a more up-to-date version of Wine, like the 5-point numerical releases, or if you're watching this video even in the future, we might be on Wine 6 or 7 by then. You can go ahead and install the development branch. But we're gonna, since this is going to be a server environment, we're going to be doing the stable environment. Oops, we forgot to do an update. Alright, now we can go ahead and install that. Oh no. Well, let's see if we can fix this. I believe we forgot to add the 32-bit architecture support, so that is my fault. When you follow these directions, please go back and install that first. Now let's see if we can install Wine. And we can. Look at all those packages to install. This is going to take a good minute. I'm just going to let this churn away, and I'll be back in a moment. Alright, now it looks like we have Wine all installed. Now we need to go ahead and install that XV frame buffer. To give us a virtual desktop. Alright, I do believe that is pretty much all we need in terms of setup for that. Now we need to package and upload our copy of the HX co-op mod. Now I already have it installed on my system somewhere here. I'm gonna go ahead and zip this all up. And I'll leave a link of my package in the description. So anybody who already owns Deus Ex, they can already just easily download and copy my package. Hopefully it'll make their life a little bit easier. Gonna go ahead and rename that, get rid of all the spaces. And now we need to upload it. I like to use a program called FileZilla. It's one of my favorite particular SFTP file transfer protocol clients. And we're gonna update this. Let's see, yep, 22. And we went ahead and we created the Deus Ex user earlier, and we're gonna log in with those credentials. So when we upload these files, they're already gonna have the proper file permissions for that user. And we're already in the Deus Ex user's home folder, so and just go ahead and sling it over. Alright, now that it's transferred, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna create a little directory. We're gonna call this one HX. We're gonna sling that in there. That's all we need for that. I don't believe we need much more for the command line, but we're gonna keep that open. For the most part, be able to go ahead and use this. And one of the things I do love about Webmin is the fact that as long as your session is, from the moment you open your Webmin session, it starts recording all your statistics. So it's very useful for diagnosing resource limitation problems. If your whatever package you rent ends up not being powerful enough, this is a good way to help diagnose it. Generally, you don't want your CPU maxing out or your memory maxing out at any particular time, or your swap filling out. Alright, so now we need to go ahead and we need to go to our file manager and go to the proper home folder, go to where we downloaded our package, and we're going to extract this out. Bada bing, bada boom, we're all extracted. Now we can go ahead and remove that archive that we created. Gonna go ahead and remove this shortcut, don't need that. Alright, the bread and the butter is in the system folder. When what you're used to playing in your single player playthroughs, you'd be loading up the original Deus Ex exe, but in the case of the co-op mod, you actually load up the HX exe. And in the case of a server setup, we're going to actually need to configure it for a server. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up the INI file. And this is where all the good stuff is. So here's where we're generally going to want to set our port. I recommend leaving it at the default port for yourself. But if I remember correctly, I had changed the port, the default port. I think it was the 777 before. Hold on one second, I need to double check that. Nope, I was wrong. I had upgraded that. It is 7790. All right. Some things that you can always change, you know, your UDP ports, etc., etc. Don't really need to worry about any of the rendering. Some of the things you can change would be like turning off monsters, humans only, no cheating, etc. I will be changing this later. Couple things I did. I made it so spectators could talk to people in game. We could have some spectators float around. Made it so there wasn't a game password, but there was an admin password that will be changed later after this video, along with all the passwords. Some of the things I like to do for a server environment is I like to go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and turn all the logging on. And that'll pump out to the HX server log in the system folder here. Now we can have some of our creative fun here. This one's going to be your name that's going to be displayed when people are looking in the server browser and in the Discord bot. This is just a short little handler for the backend to be aware of. In which case, this is our US HX game server. And the name will be the official HX US server. Go ahead and you can type in any information you want here. Alright, we want to make sure uplink's on, that it's got the proper port, etc, etc. If you have custom maps, you can go ahead and slide them in here, although I don't know very many people that have custom maps that are compatible with Han's mod yet. I believe there is some scripting changes, but you'd have to contact him about that. As far as changes in this one, that's pretty much it. Things you can change, like making it so only JC models are allowed, like JC Denton models, making it if cheats are enabled or disabled. Since this is a public server, I'm actually having the cheats disabled. We've been having a lot of issues with people coming in, spawning a crazy amount of NPCs and actually crashing the server. So for the time being, public servers have cheats disabled. For your private server, I highly recommend that you enable them. There are occasions where you can gib out unexpectedly and lose all your items, and it's actually nice to have them to be able to be spawned back in, essentially. So we went ahead and we saved it, closed it. Now we need to see if it will run for the first time. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to be using a program called Tmux. It's going to open up a session inside of our session, but it allows us to save it to the background for later. One of the things that people aren't immediately aware of is that in an SSH session, as soon as you disconnect, whatever you've been running within this terminal, if it's not part of a background daemon, it's going to close. So if you go ahead and you just execute the Deus Ex server, co-op server, in this terminal and then you just disconnect, it's going to close the server down too. So to fight that, we're going to use Tmux. So we're going to open up a Tmux session and we're going to go ahead and see if we can get Wine to boot the server right off the bat. So let's see here. We're going to want to make sure that we are the proper user. and make sure that we're in that user's home directory, and we are. We're gonna go where the server files are located. And there it is. We can see the HX exe that we want to run. But for the sake of running everything in a headless environment, we're going to be using HCC with the server tag. So now to get the thing ready to run in a server or in a headless environment, we have to prep the system for that. So first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to tell the virtual frame buffer to run on a virtual port of 99 and run in the background. Now we need to export. Now we need to tell our command line session that to be aware of this virtual export or frame buffer essentially. I believe I did that correctly. We'll find out in a moment. And now we can use wine to launch Now we're getting some errors here. Not necessarily a deal breaker. It could just be building the wine prefix in the background. Not positive. We'll give it a moment here. Looks like it isn't progressing, so we're going to cancel that out there. Let's see if it launches under wine then. And it did. So we actually, at the moment, have a working Deus Ex server. Alright, so it looks like it's at the end of the boot. We can see that it resolved the master server. So we should, in theory, be able to go in now. Gonna minimize that, minimize that. And there we are. We have successfully set up a Deus Ex co-op server, and for incredibly cheap. Most Windows servers are going to cost 4 to 5 times the amount of a Linux server. So through modern advancements in Linux, we now are able to do things on older game servers are able to do run on server packages that are much cheaper than what we used to have to pay. And hopefully I've taught somebody along the way here, and maybe I'll make more videos. I know the next video that's going to be coming out after this is actually going to be securing the server a little bit. We're going to be setting up firewall. We're going to be installing fail to ban, and we're going to be changing some SSH ports. Yeah, I just wanted to throw in really quick there before we head out. I never actually did show you guys how to close out of your SSH session properly. So if you go back to your SSH terminal, and if you hit Control B and then tap D, it'll detach the session and run it in the background. Now you can actually successfully just close the terminal and it'll continue running in the background. Now if you want to come, like say if your server crashes and you need to come back to it or something like that, all you have to do is type tmux and attach, and it'll reattach to the session where you left off. Beautiful, isn't that? So thanks for joining along. I appreciate everybody who decided to stick around this long, and hopefully catch you guys around the next time.